Welcome in. Get myself settled here. Talking about Venus. And I'm reading from a book. Here that talks about the sign that Venus is the sign that Venus is in. I'm going to read from it for as long as I can before I start coughing and lose my voice. Why is that there? Okay. So before I get into it, I'm going to read some of the introduction. It talks about Venus having two natures, an inner nature and an outer projected nature. The inner nature of Venus correlates to how we are inwardly relating to ourselves and how we go about uniting inwardly discordant aspects of our overall nature or personality. Within this archetype, Venus correlates to the psychology of listening, how we listen to ourselves and thus how we listen to other people. How we relate to and thus feel about ourselves generates an inner vibration or magnetism which attracts others who reflect or symbolize our self-relationship. For example, if a person has Venus in Virgo and is inwardly relating to oneself in very self-critical ways, feels very inadequate, and is all too aware of their shortcomings, is it illogical to conclude that this person will attract others who are very critical towards this person? So I'll just read a little bit more until we get some people here. If we get anyone coming in, then I'll get into the signs. The Venus in Virgo, that's an interesting one. I thought when I was younger that I did this. That I was very self-critical, maybe not that self-critical, but and then I attracted other people who were also self-critical. So I'm not going to read this whole thing. I think it's going to go over the head of most people. Then it gets into the 4 evolutionary conditions that we have to remember when we're reading something like this. Generally, we could just say 3: the consensus, the individuated, and the spiritual states. And he talks about Venus and Virgo manifests differently relative to the evolutionary condition of any given individual. And we have to understand the dynamic in the birth chart. This is why I'm not a big fan of these videos that are online, because people are watching them and they don't understand. They're being considered without considering the birth chart of the person, and they're also not considering the evolutionary state of the person, which can only be looked at in a consultation or one-on-one face-to-face meeting. The point here is that no sign has just one meaning or orientation, but is an archetype that has a spectrum within it. So by understanding the birth chart, then you can understand what point within the total spectrum of any sign a planet, Venus, is orientated to. So a quick note on Venus retrograde. We have Venus retrograde coming up. And I will mention a quick story about that. It is retrograde the least amount of time of any planet in our solar system. Venus retrograde in a natal chart has very specific archetypal correlations that condition how we inwardly and outwardly relate to ourselves and other people. Consistent with the archetype of retrogradation in general, Venus retrograde correlates with a necessary rebellion or individuation of its function relative to our orientation to relationships. First, a person that comes to mind, the tennis player Venus Williams. She's often associated with her sister, Serena, but she has Venus retrograde in her chart, and here she is in her early 40s, never married, no kids, super famous, and she's doing a lot of work on YouTube now. So you see that Venus retrograde really taking effect, but then again, you have to consider the evolutionary state. It's not really that much of a rebellious condition. Being Venus Williams is more or less would be in the consensus state or the individuated state, early individuated state. So thus the Venus retrograde will inherently rebel against the cultural conditioning of how we are expected to define ourselves in general, the meaning of life specifically, and how we are expected to be in our relationships, gender-specific roles, how children are meant to be raised, the purpose of relationship, and so on. I think someone like her in the consensus state would have, she did rebel a little bit against the typical upbringing of a tennis player. So you could see there's just very, very little rebellion there. Not really that much. Nothing crazy that we know about. When Venus is retrograde at birth, the individual consequently internalizes the Venus function. This means that such an individual is orientated to establishing an inner relationship with themselves as a primary focus in life. And you can see with someone like her, compared to her sister, she's more introverted. Again, her having a life now of creating something on the internet versus someone who is just in a Super Bowl commercial. I'm sorry, in a Super Bowl halftime show. Consequently, there is a perpetual inner questioning of who they are and what they need in order to actualize a life consistent with their individuality. By internalizing the Venus function, the individual is essentially defined through the Taurus side of Venus versus the Libra side of Venus. So we have, with Venus retrograde coming up, this creates this process of internalizing. That's why you hear of people talking about relationships getting shaken up during Venus retrograde, because people start to they're compelled to more seriously consider these relationships, as opposed to when Venus is direct. Especially considering the birth chart, considering the transits and other things going on, a person may just be going with the flow. Everything's fine. And recently, I knew someone recently who, to give you an example, thought that at one point was going through a transit and their relationship was done. It was done, and but she couldn't get out of it for whatever reason. She was still in it, but she knew it was over. And then a couple of weeks later, the transit passed. Everything's fine, and all of a sudden, she's talking about the future with this person and what's going to happen at the end of the year, what they're going to do, et cetera, et cetera. But now here we have Venus retrograde coming into effect, and another transit coming into effect. Now, I'm not in communication with this person, but I'm willing to bet that now everything that was said there in the beginning is going to come back around, and she's going to be compelled to seriously consider what the right decision is here. Is she making a decision based on fear and not based on what she needs to do to get what she wants in life? Now, that doesn't mean that when the Venus retrograde, lots of people do this. When the Venus retrograde goes over, and again, the transit's over, if you can get through that, maybe everything goes back to normal and they go with the flow. Essentially, they fall asleep. They fall asleep until the next time around. And if the situation, if the problems aren't resolved, which they could be resolved, but then maybe 10 years later, they come up again because they weren't really resolved. They will, there's a Band-Aid, so to speak. Maybe a baby is born, and that's a Band-Aid in a sense. It's something that happens that can where you can ignore the real deeper problems. Because of the deep internalization of the Venus function, the Venus retrograde person relates to others in a very different way. And this is where you could see during a Venus retrograde people acting differently. This is also very frustrating when you're dating, when you're relating to other people. Because if it's a Venus retrograde, for example, another example, I love examples. I'm sorry if people don't like them, but if I wanted to go out during a Venus retrograde and go to a bar and start trying to find dates, relating to other people, talking to other women, and here it is, sure enough, a Venus retrograde, and I meet somebody, and everything's going well, and then a week later they're gone. Why? Because it was a Venus retrograde, and they're acting. They're in this state here where they're acting weird. They're acting in a different way than they typically would. Me, I'm just acting normally because the Venus retrograde isn't going to affect me as much, or someone else might be going through this and it's not affecting them as much. And you find yourself in this situation, and it can be frustrating. Also says the Venus retrograde person creates an atmosphere around them where there's a buffer that does not allow others to penetrate into their inner reality. The Venus retrograde person appears to be enigmatic or difficult to understand. Now, a person can do this somewhat and not have Venus retrograde in their chart, for sure. And again, that's why you have to look at the whole chart and things like that. Now, it says here something interesting. In my work as a counseling astrologer, I've counseled over 15,000 clients to date, and I've observed that many Venus retrograde people naturally attract partners who have a strong Uranian emphasis in their natures, even if they do not have Venus retrograde themselves. So Venus retrograde people could attract people who are Aquarius-like, walk to the beat of a, what's the saying? Walk to the beat of a different drummer. As a pre-existing pattern, the Venus retrograde person has already learned or is focused on learning the polarity point or sign of the natal Venus in the birth chart. So we really have to look at the polarity point when you have a retrograde. Karmically and evolutionary speaking, the Venus retrograde person reflects a situation in which they are necessarily repeating or reliving past life relationship dynamics in the current life. So the Venus retrograde is indicating repeating or reliving past life relationship dynamics. The specific nature of those dynamics are reflected in the following indicators: the house and sign that the retrograde Venus is in, the nature of the aspects that it is making to other planets, the nature of the planets that it is forming aspects to, the nature of the houses that these aspected planets are in, the nature of the houses that the signs Libra and Taurus occupy. So if you're repeating relationship themes, we can look at the birth chart and we can see what that's going to be like, or if it correlates to what you're experiencing in life. Also, Venus retrograde means that these people are karmically and evolutionarily determined to re-meet key people that they have known in other lifetimes in which something has not been finished or resolved. Now, here's my story. Let me give you a quick story. even though there's no one in the room. Maybe someone will rewatch this. That'll be the end on Venus retrograde. We'll get into the signs. So I recently had a change that was made that really sent me in a different direction. I'm talking about like a week ago. And Venus isn't in retrograde yet, but it's like within days of turning retrograde here. And I went somewhere that if this change wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't have went there. And on my way home, I decided to go to the grocery store that was in this area that I never go, and it's not in my local area. And I wasn't sure. I was driving. I wasn't sure. Should I go there? I like this place better, but it's kind of out of the way. And then I did. I decided to go to this grocery store. And now the grocery store I've been going to in my local area, I haven't seen anyone I know in, it's got to be years, which is weird. But so I'm in this store and I'm going down the aisle. You know how you're going down the aisle and you can hear somebody coming, and you don't leave the aisle because you can hear them. You just kind of wait. And some people don't. They just go around. I could hear this cart, and I stood there and I waited. And then as they walked in front of me, and then I walked out, and I looked right at her, and she looked right at me, and I bit my lip like, and I smiled a little bit, and she smiled. I don't know if she recognized me, but this person is from when I was like 17 years old. And I've seen her a couple times in the past few years at these different places, but I have really no interest in this person at all. I don't know how I think they have a boyfriend anyway, but I just thought, that's interesting. Right before this Venus retrograde, that this happens. And as I said, a change was kind of enforced upon me. I would have never been in this situation if it wasn't for this change. I would have never seen this person. And that's just my Venus retrograde story. And it's happened to me a lot in my life. And it's really annoying because, you're looking at this, you're reading this, and you're thinking, Venus retrograde means that people are karmically and evolutionarily determined to meet key people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I have Venus in Aquarius. And it's also making a sextile to Uranus. So just that is very interesting, but it's annoying because nothing's happening. There's no resolution. I want the resolution. I'm the type of person that I want this dance to be over with. Let's get it on. And I even considered like messaging this person. Like I should have said something to him, but like I didn't. I considered messaging them on social media, but then I saw they had a boyfriend. And I'm like, it's just ridiculous because nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. These meetings, these encounters, they're just annoying. So that's my story. That's my little rant. I'm going to stop there. We're going to get into Venus and Aries. Venus. You know what? Let's start with Pisces. We had two people pop in, pop out. It's still early. I don't know what YouTube's doing with this. It's Friday. Let's just go random. Because these are kind of long. It's Friday, 6:47. Venus in Libra. Individuals with Venus in Libra have learned to understand who they are as individuals through the initiation of all kinds of relationships with people who symbolize the diversity of life itself. Through this initiation, Venus in Libra person learns to evaluate who they are as individuals through comparison and contrast, which they are not. This person values this, that person values that, and so on. So this person, Venus in Libra, can be frustrating for both parties, really, because they are going to find themselves in situations where they don't know what they want. They're going into relationships to find out what they want, to learn about relationships. To learn about what they want, what they don't want. And that's the thing. They're not going to come to a realization. They may think they know what they want. They're not going to. This can be, you think of 40 years of the life. The reality is Libra is learning balance. The Venus and Libra person cyclically becomes inwardly destabilized by losing the sense of self or inner-centeredness, to cyclically isolate from all social interaction. Why would they do this? Because they have to understand what they just went through. I know someone who has this. Very frustrating. You can't say anything because then you sound like something I'm not going to say, or whatever they make up, because they don't understand this. The reactionary cycle is a reflection of the survival instinct that is embodied in the Taurus side of Venus. Remembering that the inconjunct naturally exists between Taurus and Libra. These two extreme cycles are triggered because of this natural inconjunction. I'm going to be Venus and Libra, socialize, learn about this person, learn about that person, have fun, be a flirt, and then all of a sudden I'm going to be a recluse. Out of nowhere, everyone who's built relationships with you, Venus and Libra, thinks you're this fun type of person and social person, and then all of a sudden you close off, you block people, you close people out. Venus and Taurus, the inner crisis leading to a cycle of withdrawal so that you can process everything that you went through. Is this really what I want? This is why you have Venus and Libra characterized as the chameleon, because they'll put on different faces in order to not really reveal what's really happening. They don't want to, depending on the charts, etc. They may not want to put their emotions out there like that. So they'll become a chameleon. The chameleon effect occurs for another reason as well. The archetype of Libra correlates to principle of relativity. The Venus Libra person inherently understands this principle in such a way as to be able to relate to diversity of values and beliefs and to the lifestyles they create. Therefore, they can support others in their lifestyles no matter how different they are. This is why they can seem like a chameleon to others who are more fixed in their related patterns to others. Venus and Taurus, for example. So the Venus and Libra can, this is so annoying. I'm sorry, if you have Venus and Libra, I can't. It's just, this Libra archetype is so annoying. They can, they're really good at relating to you and giving you what you want and need, and you think they're your friend. You think they want to be around you. You think they like you. They don't even say they like you. They don't. That's just how they are. I mean, they might, but they, like, you know what I mean, like you a lot. And again, their real life is nothing. They're, in their mind, they're like, we can never exist together because I'm just tapping into your world, but you don't really know my world. And it gets into how Libra is a square to Capricorn, Cancer. This is very general here, that it promotes a situation where the Venus and Libra person grew up in a family in which their needs were not honored or embraced by one or both parents. Instead, one or both parents was always telling the child what they needed and what was expected of them based on their own needs. When the child attempted to assert its own needs, the parents would not listen. So this can be a case where the Venus in Libra really doesn't get to be who they want to be. Sexually, the Venus and Libra person is a natural giver who can be extremely sensitive to the needs, feelings, and desires of their partner. Very true. We can say sexually, Venus and Libra is, if I said any negative things about Venus and Libra, this is, if you have a partner who's Venus and Libra, from my personal experience and what he's saying here, I think is a great partner to have. Because of that, if they're committed to you. If they're committed to you, if they're open, if you're open, like in a really good positive relationship, the Venus Libra person will manifest a natural sexual grace and beauty. I'm not going to get into that. For evolution to proceed, Venus and Libra person must embrace the polarity, Aries. This means that they must learn to inwardly listen to themselves instead of always listening to other people. Oh man, life is just a mess. How about Venus in Aquarius? Have been rebelling against or liberating themselves from common value systems and relationship forms as defined by the consensus of the society they live in. Man, this can be cause a lot of problems too, because you think Venus and Aquarius, like, okay, they're going to be like free, they're liberated, they have all these different relationships and this and that. I have Venus and Aquarius, and I can tell you that's not how it is. It's more or less your Venus and Aquarius, as it says here, liberating themselves from common value systems and relationship forms as defined by consensus of the society they live in. That's for the life, potentially liberating yourself from the life for the whole life, and that means that your relationships are how you may see your relationships happening in your mind, Aquarius, are not happening in real life because you're still liberating yourself from Capricorn, from Venus and Capricorn. Learning about the nature of their individuality and the ongoing awareness of who and what they are. Again, you might begin to know and know who you are, what you are, but then expressing that and having people listen to that or see you in that way in the life may not happen, or it may be a lifetime thing. So there's different reactions to this and different possibilities. Could be intimately attracted to those that are radically different, interracial relationships, different ethnicities, being in a relationship with people that speak different languages, from different classes, big age separations. I think this is normal. However, the rest of the world doesn't. That's Venus and Aquarius. And it really gets into details here, so I'm going to skip. They can be very adept at posing questions and leaving it at a question level in such a way that the one receiving the question creates a gestation within their own consciousness, leading to the answer from within themselves. By nature, the Venus and Aquarius person is not monogamous. Again, this depends on the consciousness. I would say most people most people are not experiencing that they are monogamous, even with Venus and Aquarius. at this point. Where are we at here? 30 minutes. There's no way I can do all of these. Venus and Pisces. Learning to embrace the transcendental value system in order to create a sense of ultimate meaning in their life. Man, who doesn't need that? How many people need that in their life? And what they have isn't good, it's not really doing the job. They probably think it is. This is leading to a series of lifetimes in which the individual has experienced a tremendous amount of personal and social disillusionment. See, this is the thing, Venus and Pisces. They're more likely than not, they're going to go through a process of disillusionment, especially if they want to learn. How does that work? Well, my romantic relationship is a dream come true. Disillusionment on its way. My religion or sense of my spiritual practice is the one, is what I thought was going to be it for me. Disillusionment. How many different spiritual practices are out there? And then from one to the next, especially if you're involved in religions, one religion to the next. Seeking the truth. Travel. Venus and Pisces wants to travel all over the world, especially now. Gives them that ultimate meaning. And then disillusionment. It's just rocks. It's just earth and rocks. And the same people that just speak different languages. Disillusionment. Maybe we'll pick up there later. No one's here to talk to me. So I'm going to end it there and have a good night.